average attendance trends in person per week. This goes back to 2019. You can see in this service we used to average about 62, which is about what, if you were here last week, that's what it would have been like. And in traditional, they used to average 46. Then 2020, when COVID hit, we dropped to an average of 16. They had an average of 13. We picked back up a little bit in 2021, average of 25 and 26. But for the first 2 months of this year, you can see our trends are down again. So that's our average attendance.
Part of that's because we were out of church for 3
And we
weeks.
were out of church, yeah. The COVID scare again. Going back, tried to give you some back history on this. 2019, we had an income of $160,000 and had an expense of $177,000, so we were in the hole on that one. But I believe, and Deb could correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that's reflective of our insurance that we have to pay every year in October is a huge amount, and you'll see that in just a minute, but it's like around $20,000. And so I'm thinking that that expense there that shows we're in holes because we had to pay that. And we used to have what, if you know what an escrow account is, we used to kind of have an escrow account or a savings account that we put money in all the time. And that used to be enough to be able to pay the insurance. Unfortunately, it's not anymore, and I'll get to that in a minute. In 2020, COVID, we had an income of $153,726, but that is reflective of a $13,000 government loan that government grant that we were given. We did not have to pay back, and a $10,000 CD that we cashed in just to be able to make ends meet. So the $16,000 it shows we were in the hole is actually more like $40,000 we were in the hole. So we had major expenses in 2020 that we did not have income to cover. 2021, you can see that, you know, we've tried to do some budget cuts and whatever, but we were still way down from what we really needed. And then so far this year, we have only taken in $24,000 for the first 2 months. So what we really are needing is some additional sustainable income. And one-time gifts are great, but that's not necessarily going to get where we need to be. The income that's needed are to cover. Okay, well, let me give a little bit of history on Pastor Hartland. When he was hired, he's what's called a supply pastor. And there's kind of a group of those that they have. There's not a lot of them, but they're not licensed. They're not an ordained elder in the church or anything like that. So they don't get any of the health insurance or pensions paid for them. Well, praise be to God, Heartland's getting ready to be licensed. And so he will start getting his pension and insurance paid. So even though this says it's $19,510, it's not just to cover Heartland, because no matter who we have, that will have to be paid. So to cover, and I don't have that in there on the exact amounts, but anyway, for the next 6 months, we need about an additional $19,000 just to cover the pension and insurance and stuff like that for him. And then in October, we're estimating that our insurance that we will have to pay is about $22,000. We only have $3,500 of that in our savings account right now. So you can see we're really, really short of where we need. So we are going to need an additional $18,500 approximately to be able to pay that insurance. So those are the two big things that are coming up in the future of our church. So what are we going to do about it? Well, one thing we've already done is we've done budget cuts. I mean, we have basically cut down to if we cut much more, there's not a lot going on in the church, but if we cut more, there's nothing going to be happening here. You can kind of see I went to 2019 and forward, and you can see where we're at. The $168,077 we have proposed for this year, about $90,000 to $95,000 of that is to cover expenses of all of our staff people. So that's Heartland, and that's the secretary, and that's the custodians, and I think that maybe included in that might be the lawn care and stuff like that. So we have really cut that budget. Can I get over here to get my paper? We have cut, like on programming for the entire church year, we only have figured $1,400. For worship, we've only allotted $950 for worship, for expenses for worship. For outreach, now that does include our apportionments and our district askings. We're at $26,000. Now, 21 of that is our apportionments. So, and that we pay those so that the conference keeps going, basically. I mean, you know, that's the way that they're funded for the state. And we certainly have papers available if anybody wants to see any of these. And then there's 3 of us that you can talk to at the end if you want to. So some options to increase that sustainable income that we have. Obviously an increase in people's givings that we have right now. And that would need to be ongoing. It's not just this year, because these expenses aren't just for this year. They're going to continue to be there. So even if we don't get to keep Pastor Hartland, we have to figure that we're going to have another pastor that has those same expenses. And that could be in the form of pledges. It could be in the form of one-time gifts. But like I said, that one-time gift doesn't take care of us unless you're going to give that gift every single year to help us out. And then also we talked about in our committee meetings, the membership growth. You know, we need to grow our membership, but how do we do it? What's the solution? I mean, every church is saying that. We need to grow our membership, but how do we do it? So,
shut off the internet.
well, that's only like $100 a month.
No, I meant to make them come to church.
Oh. Yeah,
Get them back in the churches and not off the internet.
well, that's true.
That's our excuse. I'll watch it on Facebook.
Yeah, some people are still doing that. And unfortunately, the trend has been, if they're watching it from home, they're not necessarily making the donation to their church. So options to meet the budget, obviously we could have, hopefully raise the funds to be able to meet that budget. Or another option that we in the United Methodist have is to move to what's called a 2-point charge. Now, Heartland has said it's really not up to him and it's not up to us. It's ultimately up to our district superintendent and the bishop. But we have the option in Methodist communication or denomination of having a pastor that's in charge of more than one church. And some of them are even in charge of 3 churches. And so then what happens there is, I'm just going to use, just as an example, I'm just going to say Prairie Chapel, because they're right down around the corner. You guys know that. So let's say that they have 50 people and we have 150 people. So we would have 3 times the amount they have. So we would have 3 times the cost of what they would have. So it's divided that way on a 2-point charge. Or if you had a 3-point charge, then it's divided into the 3 churches according to how much they have or how many people they have attending and what they need. So that would definitely be one way to cut our expenses if we went to a 2-point charge. But it would probably mean that we would lose this service right here, because a pastor probably wouldn't have time to do 2 services here and a service somewhere else. So it would probably go to a 1 service at our church, and probably be the late service. The timeline, obviously, we need immediately. We need to raise these funds immediately. The end of June is when they typically move ministers, but ours have been in the Methodist Church this year. I guess they've pretty much been moved all year long, off and on, you know, if the need arose. So we were kind of saying by July 1, we have to make a decision and, you know, figure out what we're going to do. There is an informational church. We have heard that some people are holding back because they don't know what the future of the Methodist Church is. Pastor Hartland has spoke from the pulpit and told us that right now there's nothing happening for 2 more years. The annual conference has been postponed, and so there's absolutely no changes going to happen to this church right here in what you're seeing and the way we're made up or the givings or anything like that for 2 more years. But we do have that set up for May 21st, which is a Saturday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It'll be right here in the, you want it Fellowship Hall or Sanctuary? Yeah, Fellowship Hall. So if you want more information, they have what they call it's a team that comes, and I don't know if it'll be 1 person or a whole team, but just 1 person, okay. But that person will have lots of answers if you have questions at that time. And then contact persons, Roy is not here. He is traveling overseas right now for a wedding, but he will be back if he's somebody that you're comfortable talking to, or you can talk to Carol, or you can talk to myself, or even the pastor. So we're all available to answer other questions you might have, but we just wanted to bring this before everybody so that everybody's on the same page and you know where we're at and what we're looking at for the future of this church. Okay?